I'm deeply grateful to Rabbi Mintz and to the officers of URA for having invited me to come to speak to all of you. I would like to share with you a story that to me is so touching. And when it happened to me, right here in my home where I'm making this video, I was taken by such surprise because it just happened out of nowhere. I just want to share with you, it was the night of the Seder. It was the first Seder night. It was a number of years ago. And we were all sitting in the dining room having the Seder. I was here with my children and some of my grandchildren. And one of my grandchildren, a 3-year-old named Avramala at that time, and he was 3 at the time. And of course, he was also at the Seder, but as you can understand, the 3-year-old is not really following. He sits at the table, he runs to the kitchen, he runs to the living room, he gets some toys, and the Seder goes on, and whatever part he can participate, he's participating, but of course the adults are there, and I'm leading the Seder. All of a sudden, we're about to come to the part of Vehisha Amda. Now, Vehisha Amda is a very, very happy part of the Seder, as you all know. Everybody holds up the kais, and we all sing Vehisha Amda together, and just as we're getting ready to sing Vehisha Amda, my little grandson comes over to me and he says to me, Zaidi, can I sit on your lap? Well, I can tell you this, Mitzvah Hashem, all of you will be Zaidis and Bubbies or whatever, and when your grandson wants to sit on your lap by the Seder, of course, what's the question? So I picked up my kais in my right hand, and of course I had my grandson on my left lap, and we're getting ready to sing Vehisha Amda. And everybody is singing Vehisha Amda together, and all of a sudden, as I'm singing it, and I'm saying some of the words, I get so choked up that I just, tears came to my eyes. I couldn't sing anymore, and I started crying. And everybody's looking at me like, what is he crying? And it's so embarrassing because, I'm the leader of the Seder. Everybody's singing and looking at me, and I'm just so overwhelmed. And the reason that I was so overwhelmed was because as I was holding my grandson, I said these words, and we all know these words. Not only one nation is trying to get rid of us. In every generation, they're trying to get rid of us. And I was thinking to myself, doesn't it ever end? When does it stop? We lost 6 million. So many people in Eretz Yisrael are hurt in so many different ways. And the Yidden throughout the generations have been so persecuted. And now the Baal HaGoda is telling us it never ends. And I'm thinking, what's in the future for my grandson? What's in the future for all the children his age? And I was so distraught by what the Baal HaGoda was telling us about the future of Klal Yisrael and our relationship to the nations of the world that I was crying. Of course, I took hold of myself, and the Seder just wasn't the same. And at the end of the Seder, I went through every single Haggadah, and I just wanted to get some comfort. I just wanted to get some insight into these words. And finally, I found the Haggadah of the Chidah, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azaloy, a great Spanish Haggadah. And he writes, what does it mean? In every generation they're trying to get rid of us. We know that there's some generations, take a look like in America. You can have kinusim, you can have a siyum hashas of 70,000 people in total in different places, and you can have schools all over and kinusim and camps. Nobody's getting rid of us in America. What does that mean? And he gives a very great answer. And he says sometimes it's the sword and sometimes it's the smile. In other words, sometimes, let's say like in Nazi Germany, the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, with a sword, they tried to get rid of Yidden. They killed them out in the concentration camps, killed them out in the streets. But sometimes, in certain generations, in certain places, it's because that we get along with the Goyim so well, and we have such a free society that Yidden fall by the wayside, and they become, unfortunately, involved with the Goyim, especially the non-from Yidden. And then we lose so many, and we lose so many to assimilation. So, at least I had some nechama, I had some insight into what those words meant. Many of you know that I'm a mile. So the first day Cholamoid, I go out to Long Island, and I had a bris in a place called Mount Sinai, of all places. The father was not Jewish, the mother was a Jew, and the grandparents, of course, wanted to have a bris because the mother was a Jewish person, and the baby was Jewish. And right after, when I did the bris, I turned around, and I saw on the table the most unbelievable thing. I saw a blue box of Hurwitz margaret and matzahs, and right next to the matzahs was a platter of bagels, right? Chametz and matzah. And then there was a cheese platter and there was a meat platter. Every single issur that you could think of, basa, b'chalav, chametz, and matzah, it's all there. And I was thinking, what does the Rabbi say about a bris like this? What does the Leon say about a bris like this? How in the world did this happen? And you know why it happened? It happened because of the smile. It happened because the mother, Jennifer, she could go to any college and she could go to any society and she could get a job in any place, because today in America it's a free society. You can do almost anything. So the Goyim and the Yidden mix. And when you have that, you have a spiritual Holocaust. And so therefore, if you think about it, what's going on in the world? Today, there are 13.3 million Yidden. Only 1.8 million are frum. That means 86.5% of Yidden are not frum. 4 out of 5. Could you imagine the pain of the Rabbi Shalom? 4 out of 5 of his children are at risk. They're not frum. And out of those 4 out of 5, do you know that among the Yidden that are not frum, there are 1.5 million Yidden practicing other religions? How are we going to stop this? This is a tsunami of I don't want to say apocryphals, but it's a tsunami of terrible spiritual wasteland. And we're losing so many Yidden. And that's where Ura comes in. And you know why Ura comes in? Because Ura deals with the children, and then the children deal with the adults. And you know something? It's only with the children that we're going to be able to save Klal Yisrael. And I'll tell you how you know this. Because when Moshe Rabbeinu went to Paray, what did he say? B'nureinu u'b'zkeneinu nelech. With our children and our elders, we're going to go out of Mitzrayim. And he mentioned the children first. And the idea is that it's only through the children, when they come back to Yiddishkeit and they are so firm in their beliefs and in their Avos Yisrael and in their Torah and their mitzvahs, that it inspires the parents to come back. And that's exactly what it says in Malachi at the end of time. When Eliyahu Navi comes, the pasuk tells us, "V'heishiv leiv avos al banim v'leiv banim al avoisam." V'heishiv leiv avos, Zok Rashi, ayidei banim, through the children. And that's what Ura does. Ura has the camps, the zone camps, for boys and for girls. And not only it inspires these kids, but it makes sure that they're going to go to yeshivas. And Ura pays so much money every year for the tuition of these boys and girls that are going to yeshivas that were not from at all. And I'm telling you, the sincerity of these kids is absolutely incredible. I'll tell you a little incident that happened in one of the Ura camps in the zone. It's just incredible. It's a little 11-year-old boy. He was not from, came from a non-from family. Somehow, an Ura professional got a hold of him and tried to get him a tutor, and the tutor just began to teach him Aleph Beis in this kid's hometown, and they were able to get to Dalet. Aleph Beis, Gimel, Dalet, that's all the kid knew. And then he comes to the camp. He comes to the camp, and this kid, this 11-year-old boy, is so determined that he's going to learn the Aleph Beis that while other kids are playing sports, he's practicing his Aleph Beis. An 11-year-old kid, Hashem Tzachman, he's not embarrassed. And finally, not only was he able to learn the Aleph Beis, but he was able to learn how to read. That by the end of camp, he was going around telling the counselors, look what he can read. Moida ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayim. Could you imagine what an accomplishment that is? An 11-year-old boy is able to go from not even knowing the Aleph Beis to be able to read in just a few weeks. That's what the Ava, that's what the love, and that's what the dedication of the Ura counselors are. And it's not only that they have it in camp, but they follow up with these kids afterwards. And they make sure that they get into schools. And the Ura professionals follow them into the schools and make sure that they learn with them. And they have Matzah Shabbos programs, learning programs. And it's called Avos Abanim. What kind of Avos? It's not Avos in a sense because these kids have no fathers that are from that they can teach them. But it's the Ura volunteers and the Ura professionals that are involved with these kids. I want to share with you a very interesting story that happened on a Shabbaton that Ura ran on Shabbos Chanukah. They got together many children. Some of them had been in the camp, the zone camp in the previous summer, and some they picked up in different communities. And they had a wonderful Shabbos. There were hundreds of kids, and they all lit Chanukah licht, and they all sang together. And it was just a wonderful, very upbeat, inspirational Shabbos. Now, Matzah Shabbos, the Ura counselors, what they wanted to do, and this was organized by Rabbi Chaim Usher Reichman, who's the learning director, and they wanted to have what's called an Avos Abanim program. The Avos Abanim, as we said, is a program where fathers learn with their children, but over here, of course, the counselors of Ura would be learning with these kids. And the reason they did it very cleverly was because they wanted to show them that Matzah Shabbos is a time for learning. It's not Saturday night, it's Motzei Shabbos. It's a time of holiness. It's a time of when you can become closer to Hashem as the Shabbos leaves. And so therefore, they had this wonderful learning program, and then as they have in all the other Sabbanim programs throughout wherever they have them, they had a raffle. And this little boy wins the raffle, and it's some sort of a prize, whether it's a remote control car or some sort of an iPod or whatever, some expensive little gift. And there was one of the volunteers, a fellow Dovey Pines, who watched this kid walking back holding this gift. And the kid was not happy. You know, kid wins a raffle, everybody's so happy for him, the little boy should be happy, but he wasn't happy. And he goes over to this little boy and he says, you don't look so happy. Is everything okay? He says, I'll tell you the truth, I have this already in my home. He says, would you like another prize? He said, yeah, I really would like another prize. So Dovey certainly wasn't in his job, but he's a leiv toiv ad miyoid. He's a wonderful person. So he takes this little boy and he brings him to Rabbi Reichman, and he says, Rabbi Reichman, this little boy has the prize already in his home. Is there any way that we can give him another prize so that he can go home feeling so special that he won the raffle and he goes home with something that's unique? Rabbi Reichman says, of course. Come to the room where we have all the prizes. They come into the room and there are many, many different toys there. But in the corner, there were chumashim that they were going to use the next summer in camp. And they were all piled up because this was on the campgrounds in Jefferson, New York. And the little boy doesn't go to where the toys are. He goes to where the chumashim are. And he said, I would like to have one of those. And Rabbi Reichman says to him, well, of course, you could have one of those, but that was not one of the prizes that we were offering. This is one of the chumashim that we were going to take up to camp. And he says, no, but that's what's important to me. I don't have a chumash at home. And to me, that's more important. That would be the biggest prize. And all the counselors who heard this story were so touched by it because it showed what the Shabbos did and what Ura does for these little kids. And I'll tell you something, this story that I'm about to tell you is just adorable. I mean, it's almost ridiculous. But again, it just shows you the sincerity of the children. One of these little girls who was in the zone camp, she comes to school, and now she's in a day school, but her parents are not kosher. And in this day school, which is a frum school, they served pizza for lunch. And this little girl was not eating. So they asked her, why are you not eating? Everybody's eating lunch. And she says, I had fleischiks this morning. I had meat this morning. I said, well, you had meat? She said, yeah, I had a ham sandwich. So the poor kid, she's eating tarfus in the house, but she remembers that she's got to wait 6 hours after meat. Now, of course, it's tragic and it's almost funny. But the idea is you see the sincerity of a little child, even though that she's obviously eating what's treif, but she remembered the halacha of fleischiks and milchiks and basa b'chalav, and that's what Ura is doing. And, you know, I just want to mention to you the broad scope of what Ura is doing. If you would realize how many children are going to schools literally around the country. For example, you have in the Hebrew Academy in Miami, you have children that come from the Ura Zone camps, the Poland's Day School in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, the Yeshiva of Greater Washington in Silver Springs, in Beis Shendel in Lakewood, in the Kesha Institute of Yerushalayim, and in the Ateres Yisrael School of Rabbi Youngreis, the Ezra School here in Queens, and Rabbi Kashani's in Orach Chaim. You have such a wide range of schools where these Ura children go. And that's why I believe so much that we have to get involved, as I said, not only in our own personal kiruv, but in the kiruv together with Ura. So I want to tell you another great story, a story that happened in Tanakh about a certain king that most of you probably didn't even hear of, but it's so remarkable. This person lived in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, and his name was Yeshayahu. Now I just want to tell you what it says about Yeshayahu. In Malachim Beis, Perich Chav Gimel, Pasuk Chaf Hei. And it says like this: Kamoyu loyhaya lefanav melech. There was never a king that returned to Hashem b'chol levavai u'b'chol nafshay u'b'chol ma'odai. And obviously that's based on what it says in Krishma. With his whole heart, his whole soul, all his talents. Nobody ever returned to Hashem like he did. And the pasuk tells us, va'achrov loy kam kamoyu. Nobody's going to be like him. So listen to what happens. He's now the king in the first Beis HaMikdash, and it's hard to believe, but people stopped going to the Beis HaMikdash. They stopped davening there. They stopped bringing korbanos there. And it bothered Yeshayahu like anything. And he decided he's going to make the people come back, and he's going to inspire them to bring them back. So slowly but surely, the Beis HaMikdash had fallen into disarray. You know what happens to a building when nobody comes there? You know, the ceiling begins to peel, the walls begin to crumble, the floor is buckling, and that's what was happening in the Beis HaMikdash. So he was putting away money. Him and the Kohen Gadol, Chilkiyo HaKohen, they were putting away money that they're going to refurbish the Beis HaMikdash when it comes time to really fix it up, and people are going to start coming back again. So one day he goes to Shaphan, his secretary, and he says, go to the king, tell the Kohen Gadol rather, tell him that right now we're ready, people are coming back, we're going to refurbish the Beis HaMikdash. So Shaphan goes to Chilkiyo HaKohen, and they open up the treasure chest, and there's a Sefer Torah there. And the Sefer Torah is open to a pasuk. And when they read this pasuk, they are so frightened, because the pasuk is part of the Teichacha. And the pasuk is in Dvarim Chav Zayin, pasuk Chavav, and it says like this, Oror, cursed is the one, Asher lo yokim as divrei haTorah says. Cursed is the one who will not uphold this Torah. And they take it as a bad omen. This is what we see, cursed, that we're going to be cursed if we don't uphold the Torah. And they're so frightened. And they go back to Yeshayahu. And they say, Yeshayahu, dear king, look what happened. We're trying to get the money to build up the Beis HaMikdash again. And we open up the treasure chest. The Sefer Torah is open. And that pasuk is like a horrible message to us. And listen to what Yeshayahu does. He comes and he reads the pasuk. And he screams out two words that every single one of us has to scream out tonight. Every one of us has to say these two words. When he saw those words, Or Asher lo yokim, cursed is the one who's not going to uphold the Torah, he says, Olai lahakim, I will uphold it. I will uphold it. I accept the challenge and I'm going to uphold it. And that's why he was the great king that he was. And listen to what the Yerushalmi says. What does it mean when he says, Olai lahakim? And this is what the Yerushalmi teaches us. Lomad v'limed. If somebody taught and learned, v'shomer, and he observed, and he was able to be malzik other people, he was able to give encouragement to other people, and he didn't give encouragement to other people, such a person is Ora, such a person is cursed. That's Ora Shelo Yokim. In other words, Kiruv is so important. It's not enough if you're a tzaddik. It's not enough if you're learning and you're davening. You got to make sure that others are being machazik in their limit Torah and in their Yiddishkeit and in their mitzvahs. And if you can't do it, then you got to help those people that are doing it. And Ura is doing it. And that's what we're making this video for, because we want to encourage every person to get involved in the people in your neighborhood that are not there yet, that are not involved in frumkeit, that are not involved in mitzvahs, that are not involved in davening. And the least that we can do is to help Ura, because they're doing it, and they're doing it successfully. And when we have that opportunity, they are our shlichim. And that's what we have to learn tonight. We have to learn to make a commitment to Kiruv in our own personal lives, to be makar as many as we can, and to make sure that we support such a great organization like Ura. So I just want to tell you one more thing, and with that we'll close. It was a great story that happened many, many years ago. It happened in Williamsburg. It was during the winter, and there was a terrible snowstorm. And there was a Rosh Hashiva, his name was Rabbi Shlomo Hyman. And Rabbi Shlomo Hyman was, unfortunately, he never had no children. And one of his Talmidim was Rabbi Moshe Samuels, who I remember Rabbi Moshe Samuels. He was a Rebbe in Tervadas many, many years later, but he told over the story that day when there was that snowstorm in Williamsburg, there was only 4 boys in class. Everybody thought Rabbi Shlomo Hyman was not going to teach new Gemara because there's only 4 kids. He'll review, he'll tell a story or something. He's not going to learn new Gemara. But he got so involved in the Gemara, and he was teaching with such an excitement, he had to stop for a minute just to get a glass of water. And as he was drinking the water, one of the Bochum said to him, Rebbe, take it easy. There's only 4 boys here. And listen to what he said. He said, you think I'm only talking to you? I'm talking to you and to your children and to your grandchildren. I'm talking to you and to your Talmidim and to your Talmidim's Talmidim. And Rabbi Moshe Samuels would say that later he would say, I became a Rebbe only because of my Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Shlomo Hyman. And Rabbi Moshe Samuels had hundreds, if not thousands, of Talmidim. So Rabbi Shlomo Hyman was right. He wasn't only talking to 4 boys. He was talking to 400 or 4,000 kids of all the Talmidim and all the children and grandchildren that would come from those 4 boys that were there. And that's the lesson that we have to learn. Every child that's saved, it's not only that child. It's his children and it's his grandchildren, and sometimes it's even his parents. We've come here to talk to all of you, to become so serious about Kiruv. Of course, we know this video has a lot of fun and games. It's a wonderful thing to watch. But you have to remember the seriousness of what Ura is all about. The camps, the schools, the tuitions, the dedications. And we thank Reb Chaim Mintz. Reb Chaim was the one who thought of this whole idea of Ura, and he's made it into a magnificent organization. The Eibusher should help that all of us should be involved, not only in Kiruv in our own lives, but Kiruv together with Ura. So we should live to see the day when Eliyahu Navi comes to bring Mashiach, and we'll all be able to see how this pasuk comes to fruition. Thank you.